Hello and welcome back to the UCLA Bruins Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Ferguson, writer for UCLA on SI. Today we're going to be breaking down UCLA's second round matchup against number 2 seeded UConn. We're going to be going over, key information that you need to know before the game, as well as UCLA's path to victory and kind of evaluating, what UCLA will be able to do against, the Huskies. But before we get started, I want to thank everyone right now who's listening. Apple Music, Spotify, or even YouTube. It all means a lot to me, and I cannot thank you enough. But without further ado, let's get right into it. So obviously both teams are ready to go for this second round matchup. UCLA was able to beat UCF 75-71. UConn was able to beat Furman 82-71. Both, sketchy matchups. You got to remember UConn was a 20-point favorite over, the Paladins. And that game was reasonably close. I mean, obviously, UConn was able to take advantage in the second half and kind of push the score out a little bit more. The opposite can be said about UCLA against UCF. It seemed like the Bruins really had control of that game. And then in the second half, late in the game, UCF was able to mount a comeback and kind of expose some of UCLA's weaknesses that were not, that prevalent in the first half of that game. When I look at this game, I feel like, again, UCLA will have a chance to, make some noise. With Tyler Bilodeau potentially coming back, he is questionable still. He was, a game time decision against, UCF. Obviously, UConn has their injuries. We'll get into that in a second. But I think with Tyler Bilodeau coming into this game, I think the Bruins have a very good chance of winning this game. Right now, the sports books are calling UCLA a 4.5 point underdog. ESPN is giving UCLA a 33.4% chance of winning. And I really do like those odds. Again, a 7th seed going up against a number 2 seed. It's March. Anything could happen. And I like where UCLA is at right now with their team. Offensively, they're playing well. And especially with, Tyler Bilodeau coming back, it's just going to make them that much better. Defensively, still a little concerning for the most part, but still I feel like UCLA is getting more scrappy. We saw a lot of steals. I believe UCF had, 17 turnovers. UCLA forced 13 of them. So again, UCLA's defense is playing decent, not the best. They are still susceptible to, those defensive breakdowns. But besides that, I like how the Bruins are playing. Over on UConn side, I can't say I'm that high on the Huskies. Obviously, this is a UCLA podcast, but I'm honestly being objective here. Their Big East tournament final against St. John's, the Huskies would lose by 20 points. Absolute, embarrassment. Obviously UConn had some problems in that game no matter what. But again, 20-point loss to St. John's. I feel like that opened up UCLA's window a little bit, but then only beating Furman, a number 15 seed, by, 11 points. I feel like that gives UCLA's window to open up that much more. And I think the Bruins will be able to pull off a win here. But again, it's also important to remember that, UConn was without Jalen Stewart and Silas DeMar Jr., two very impactful players for the Huskies. They were unable to play. Do I really think that's going to matter that much for UCLA? I think, if they don't play, I think the Bruins have a clear shot of victory here. If they play, I feel like it could, be a little bit sketchy. You want UConn as weak as possible. It's a part of the sport. Injuries happen. I mean, we had Tyler Bilodeau go out. So again, if we get them back and they get them back, it's going to be, more so on UConn's side. If it's just Bilodeau, coming back, UConn's players are out still. I think the Bruins win this game actually pretty cleanly. And again, I'll kind of go into my game prediction, kind of break it down. But when you're just looking at what UConn's put together, I see an opportunity here for the Bruins to kind of, take this one and win. But as far as, more general knowledge, information you need to know, the numbers, right now, UConn is scoring 77.6 points per game. This ranks them 133rd in the nation. Right in the middle of the pack there. UCLA is a similar team. I'll get to them in a second. Points allowed per game, they are 11th in the country, giving up just 65.3. And that is a scary figure for the Bruins. Obviously, we know their offense is a little bit inconsistent. And UConn obviously is fine with that because, they don't allow teams, or they force teams to make mistakes. And if UCLA comes in with inconsistent basketball, they're lousy with the ball, it's going to end ugly for the Bruins. But again, March Madness, anything could happen. So again, kind of going more down UConn stats. They shoot 48% from the field on average. They have 36.8 rebounds per game. That's a scary number for the Bruins. As we saw against UCF, UCLA would, give up, I believe 53 rebounds to the Knights, an ugly number. It really looked like UCLA just sold out rebounding wise. We didn't really see players in position fighting for those offensive and defensive rebounds. It was really heavy on the perimeter, trying not to get beat, from the 3-point line or, the mid range. It seemed like the paint was just really exposed in that game. And I feel like that's a place where UConn can come in and really take advantage of that. Terrace Reed, he is going to be a problem for UCLA kind of in that stat. Right, he's averaging 8.7 rebounds per game. Compare that to UCLA's leading rebounder, Eric Daly Jr., who's only averaging 5.8. You see a gap kind of develop here. That is definitely a matchup you want to watch out for. If we get Bilodeau back, I think that might be softened a little bit, but still, that is definitely a matchup to watch out for UCLA, especially on the defensive side of the ball. UConn has 18.5 assists per game, 5.1 blocks per game, and 6.9 steals per game. So they're a pretty complete team. A number 2 seed. It's kind of obvious that they'll be there. 30-5 on the season. They're a pretty solid team. Moving over to UCLA, they're scoring 77.7 points per game, ranking them 131st in the nation. They allow 71 points per game, which ranks them 101st in the nation. Again, that kind of just, confirms what we all know about the Bruins. They have struggled offensively. And, that's a hard thing to kind of overcome, or defensively, and that's a hard thing to overcome this late into the tournament, because teams are going to be playing their best. And if UCLA didn't get rid of those bad habits already, they're probably going to be prevalent, in this game or even down the road if they can make it past it. Am I worried? A little bit, but again, I feel like UCLA has been able to play their brand of basketball, and I'll kind of get into that a little bit more. But again, when you're kind of looking at what UCLA is dealing with here against, UConn, it's clear they are a very strong defensive team, and they have the, the team to kind of, show that, right? Terrace Reed Jr., he's been crazy. He had that center position, 8.7 rebounds. He is a borderline physical enforcer. That is going to make it hard for the Bruins to really get anything going. Silas DeMar Jr., he might not play in this game, but he's averaging 6.2 assists per game. That could give the Bruins a lot of trouble. If he is able to play, to be able to facilitate, find the open guy. And obviously UConn has the talent to make it hurt if, those players are left open. So that is definitely something to keep an eye out on. But now I'm going to kind of talk about what I believe that UCLA needs to do to take this game. But first, I kind of want to start, looking at that UCF game. What UCLA did well when they, were able to find their biggest lead of the game. They led by, 14 points, led for 83% of the game. And if there's a telltale sign about what UCLA was able to do against UCF, it was playing their own brand of basketball. I mentioned it earlier, but I'm going to go kind of deeper into that and kind of what that means. So again, when you look at UConn, obviously a great rebounding team. They have the height, they have, the physicality to beat UCLA. The same can be said about UCF and what they brought. John Bull, 7'2", just players like that. JaMychal Stillwell, again, another, 7+ rebound per game player who was going to give UCLA a lot of trouble, and he did. But what I'm trying to get at here is that UCLA forced, the Knights to make adjustments to play against UCLA. It wasn't the other way around. If, we had to play, make adjustments for UCF, our lineup is going to look funky. We're going to have Jamerson, Booker, Williams out there to kind of match that height. But instead, it was the opposite. We were able to run our regular 3-guard lineup and then have, UCF try to fill in with faster players to kind of keep up with us. Because as we saw throughout that game, UCLA was rushing, UCF on defense. They were scoring fast, weren't letting them kind of get settled. And that is going to be just as important against UConn. I feel like if UCLA is able to come out there, score quick points within, the first 10 seconds of the shot clock, scoring, at 20, even 25, I think that's where UCLA will finally get, into their bread and butter and really pick apart UConn. Defensively, they just need to be scrappy enough to win. If press as much as possible, if you will. Make those steals possible for the Bruins. I want to see a lot of deflections. I believe they had 27 against UCF. So again, I want to see them continue to build on that. I mean, Sky Clark, Trent Perry, Eric Freeney, Donovan Dent, obviously he had 6 steals in that game. I want to see more of the guards, contest these passes and make the simple things hard for UConn. I forgot what game it was. I think it was Purdue, where UCLA kind of did that same thing. It was a matter of them, pressuring the passes, the easy things, and making Purdue really think about what their next play was. And when you think about, the basic fundamentals of basketball, you were going to mess up. It's the same thing for the free throw line, an open 3-pointer. If you really think about it and it's not, muscle memory, you are going to mess up and make the bad play. And that's where UCLA really needs to figure out and how to force against UConn. And I honestly believe that is more possible than not. Again, I'm very high on this UCLA squad. They've won 7 of their last 9 following, that Mick Cronin drama against Michigan State way back then in February. Again, I just think UCLA is playing some of their best basketball, and it could not come at a better time. As for, a matchup prediction, kind of going over what I think the final score will be and how UCLA will get there, I think we could be looking at, a 75 to 70, 75 to 74 kind of win for UCLA. I think it will be close if the Bruins do win this game. I'm talking a buzzer beater, Eric Daly Jr., Trent Perry hitting that game-winning shot to send UCLA to, the Sweet 16. Very possible for the Bruins here. But, there's always 2 sides of the coin. So predicting a loss, it's hard. I think if this were to happen, UCLA's offense just goes completely dead. Tyler Bilodeau is not able to hit his shots. He's a high part of UCLA's offense, and he is just struggling, after missing that much time. Again, I'm not too sure if he is going to play, but that is a scenario where I think UCLA loses. If he comes out, makes his shots, I think, the option that UCLA wins is a lot higher. But again, if UCLA is forcing shots, playing catch up, making adjustments to UConn, that's where things will get dicey for the Bruins. Because like I said, if UCLA had to make adjustments to what UCF was putting out there, the lineup for the Bruins will look a lot very, very funky. And that's not what I want to see from UCLA. They need to play their brand of basketball, set the tone early, and if they can do that, they'll win the game. But if they don't, I could see UConn absolutely blowing out UCLA. If, what I just said happens, I think UConn could, beat us by 10 plus points. And again, that is a scary reality. But again, we've seen what this team has done when they've had to make adjustments to, match what the other team is doing. I think an example, it's kind of far back, but, think Cal Poly in that first half where UCLA was down against, a team where they were like a 10 plus point favorite on at the halftime. They were able to win the game, and that's because they played their round of basketball. But just there, a team with, worse talent, obviously UCLA is a better team, $1 million roster right there. Struggling, having to adjust. They wanted to play, quicker ball. And this was obviously when they were not running that 3-guard look, when they were, running, that vanilla lineup with, Dent, Clark, Bilodeau, Daly, and then Booker, that's when UCLA kind of had to, draw back to what they were doing and run that 3-guard lineup to match what Cal Poly was putting out there. And that cannot happen against UConn. So again, just to kind of recap what I think needs to happen for UCLA. For one, start fast, start hard, set the tone, make UConn adjust to the Bruins and what they have out there, make them play the small ball, score fast, get them uncomfortable. 2, defensively, I want to see the guards, get a couple of steals throughout this game. I think if they can get to that 10 plus turnover mark, if UConn gets 10 plus turnovers in the first half, I think UCLA has the inside route to a victory here. And again, that is just a matter of making the fundamentals harder and having them think about them. That's exactly what UCLA needs to do to win this game. But that's all I really have. It's going to be an interesting matchup. Right after the game, I'll make sure to record a podcast, kind of go over everything I saw. If UCLA loses, we'll kind of go into the players who I believe UCLA will retain, keep, and some of the players who will be leaving. Obviously, it's a huge senior class for UCLA, so we'll get more into that. And then again, just recapping UCLA season. I hope I'm recording a podcast talking about a win and previewing their next matchup against Michigan State. Best case scenario, obviously, but you never know. It's March Madness. It's crazy, and it's just great basketball from start to finish. But that's all I have today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, and as always, forwards up and have a good day.